I never thought I'd see something like this in my own house. But there he was, standing in the dark of our garage, whispering numbers to himself, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone screen. He didn't see me. He was too busy swiping, tapping, almost like he was under a spell. It was 2:47 a.m. At first, I stood frozen at the doorway, my hand hovering over the light switch. I didn't know whether to confront him, walk away, or pretend I hadn't seen anything. I chose silence. I backed away slowly, tiptoeing down the hall and into our bedroom. My body slid beneath the cold sheets like I was hiding from something evil. My husband, Jacob Walker, the man I'd loved since college, was behaving like a stranger. Something was deeply, dangerously wrong. I hadn't always been suspicious. In fact, just 6 months ago, I would have sworn on my life that Jacob was the most trustworthy man I knew. But lately, things had shifted. It began with the little things. Late nights at work that stretched into early mornings. A sudden obsession with his phone, which never left his side anymore. The constant sound of clicking, buttons, cards, chips in the background of his Zoom meetings. And then the lies. Slippery, subtle. Half-truths he coded in charm and routine. Just working on a project, babe, he'd say. It's kind of secret. You'll find out soon. I found out. It was a Tuesday morning and I was just trying to pay the electricity bill. I logged into our joint bank account, expecting to see the usual buffer, enough to cover bills and groceries and maybe a splurge at Target. But the balance was red. Minus $2,489.36. I refreshed the page. Again. And again. I clicked through the transaction history, my pulse climbing with each click. There were dozens of charges, some as small as $40, others as high as $2,000, labeled under online gaming sites, cash apps, cryptocurrency platforms I didn't even recognize. It was a graveyard of our future. I felt cold. Physically cold. Like someone had pulled the floor out from under me, and I was floating in ice water. Then the front door creaked open. He was home. Hey, sweetheart, Jacob said cheerfully, dropping his keys into the bowl by the door. You're up early. He kissed my cheek, and I stared at him like he was a puzzle I didn't remember buying. We need to talk, I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. His smile faltered. I checked our account. I continued, standing there barefoot in the kitchen, still holding my laptop like a weapon. Where's the money, Jacob? His face went pale. And then, God help me, he laughed. It's fine, babe, he said quickly. I moved it around. I'm just testing a few things. There's this guy I met online. He's helping me flip the savings for a higher return. My mouth fell open. You're investing? I repeated. With who? Through what? Without telling me? Jacob reached out to touch my shoulder, but I stepped back. It's not like that, he insisted. Look, this guy runs a gambling analytics channel. It's not random. It's strategy. It's science. You're gambling our savings, I whispered. I'm investing, he repeated. You just don't understand how it works yet. Over the next few days, things blurred. We argued. He promised. I cried. He reassured. I tried to forgive. But the numbers kept disappearing. One night, I found a poker chip in his jacket pocket. It wasn't plastic. It was ceramic, heavy, stained. There was blood on it. I started doing my own digging. While Jacob was working late, I stayed up researching the usernames I'd seen in the transaction logs. I uncovered forums where people talked about chasing losses, algorithms, live betting, language that twisted my stomach. He was addicted. And he was lying. And then came the voicemail. It was a mistake. He left his phone on the kitchen counter, and a notification popped up. Unknown number. Voicemail. Curious and shaking, I pressed play. Jacob, a low voice said. Time's up. You either pay what you owe, or you know what happens next. I dropped the phone. This wasn't just money anymore. This was something else, something dangerous. I was living in a house I no longer recognized, with a man who had gambled away not just our savings, but our safety. I tried to talk to him again. Tell me the truth, Jacob. How much do you owe? He rubbed his eyes. It's complicated. Try me. He looked at me with something that was supposed to be remorse. Maybe 20, 30,000. But I can make it back. One night. Just one more good run. You've already had your good runs, I snapped. Now you're chasing ghosts. He leaned in, his voice low. I'm doing this for us. You are destroying us. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe beside me like everything was normal. I knew it then, I wasn't safe. Not emotionally. Not financially. Maybe not even physically. Something had to change. And soon. The next day, I checked the safe. Gone. Every bond, every emergency dollar, even the gold necklace my mother had left me after she died. All of it was gone. I sat on the bathroom floor, knees pressed to my chest, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. He had taken everything. But something inside me clicked. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to make him pay. And not just in money. Later that night, I stood in the hallway again, watching him through the crack in the garage door. Same glow. Same whispers. Same monster. But this time I didn't back away. This time I smiled. Because I already had a plan. And he'd never see it coming. People say betrayal feels like a knife in the back. But that's not true. Betrayal feels like silence. It's standing in a room with someone you once trusted with your whole soul and realizing they've built an entirely separate life behind a locked door. A life you were never invited into. The next few weeks felt like a blur of cold coffee, fake smiles, and muffled sobs into the sleeve of my sweater. I played the part of a supportive wife in public, but in private, I was unraveling. And I was watching. I started keeping notes. Times, transactions, websites. I took screenshots when he left his phone unlocked. I began recording some of his late-night calls on my spare phone. Everything went into a folder labeled Project Phoenix. It was a name I chose carefully. Because I wasn't planning on surviving the wreckage. I was planning on rising from it. One Friday night, I followed him. He told me he had a networking dinner downtown. I watched him leave in that pressed blue shirt he always wore when he wanted to impress someone. I waited 15 minutes. Then I got in my car. I tracked his location through the Find My app he'd forgotten to disable on our shared iCloud. He wasn't at any restaurant. He was on the edge of the city, in a place that made my blood run cold, the Clover Club. It was an underground gambling lounge disguised as a cigar bar. I remembered the name from one of the anonymous charges I'd found, $7, 800 gone in a single night. I parked across the street and watched from the shadows. He laughed with a group of men in expensive watches. They looked like sharks dressed in Gucci. Jacob looked alive. He hadn't looked at me like that in years. Later, when he came home, he reeked of whiskey and desperation. How was the dinner? I asked, stirring my tea. Boring, he muttered. Just shop talk. I smiled. You work in software sales, Jacob. What's boring about that? He blinked. He didn't know I'd seen him. Yet. The next morning, I checked our bank account again. Another $4,200 gone. When I confronted him, he slammed the bathroom door shut behind him and screamed through it. I'm fixing it, Elena. You just don't understand. No. I did understand. Too well. He was spiraling. But what he didn't know was that I'd already met with a lawyer. A discreet, sharp woman named Linda Carver, who had guided me through the basics of financial separation and asset protection. If you act quickly, she'd said, sliding the papers across the table, you can protect what's left. But you need to decide, are you staying in this marriage, or are you building your exit? I wasn't ready to answer that then. But I knew what I was doing now. I started laying traps. I told Jacob I wanted to help, that I believed in him, that I supported his strategy. He swallowed it like honey. Oh, baby, thank you, he said, tears shining in his eyes. I just need one more shot. I know I can fix everything. So I gave him one more shot. I handed him a check for $5,000 from a fake emergency fund I'd created. Money I had scraped together from selling my grandmother's jewelry, my old piano, and a few freelance consulting gigs I'd quietly taken under a fake name. He thought it was for a big win. But I had marked the check with invisible ink that flagged it for tracing. I wanted to see exactly where it went. And I did. Within 3 days, it had been cashed, funneled through a sports betting app, and lost in a matter of hours. That's when I contacted someone else. Detective Mark Liddell, a friend of Linda's and an expert in white-collar crimes. I sent him the files I had collected. "This is enough to open an investigation," he told me, "especially if he's moving into debt with known bookies." I didn't tell Jacob, but I watched him sink deeper and deeper. One night, around 1 a.m., I heard him crying in the garage. Not quietly, but full body, broken sobs that cracked through the walls of our home. He was on his knees, holding his phone to his chest, whispering, "Please just give me one more chance." I didn't move. I didn't comfort him, because I knew the truth now. He wasn't crying because he hurt me. He was crying because he had nothing left to steal. But then something changed. Jacob became different. Softer. Nicer. He started cooking dinner, buying flowers, talking about saving us. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt sick. Because I knew this wasn't redemption. This was desperation. He was hiding something again. And I was going to find out what. I went through his car while he showered one morning. Inside the glove compartment, I found a burner phone, wrapped in a napkin. It had one contact. Viper. There were only 2 messages. Viper. The window's closing. If you can't deliver, we go to the wife. Jacob, please don't. I'll fix it. I promise. Just don't tell her. My knees buckled. This wasn't just gambling anymore. This was blackmail. That night, I confronted him again. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the burner. He froze. "You went through my things," he snapped. "You're being extorted," I hissed. "And you're still lying." His face collapsed into a blend of rage and fear. "I can handle it," he growled. "Just stay out of it, Elena." I slapped the table. "I am in it, Jacob. I'm drowning in it." His hands trembled. "If I don't pay him back, he'll come after me. After us." I leaned in, voice cold. "Then maybe you should have thought of that before betting your life away." He stared at me, something dark rising in his eyes. For a moment, I was genuinely scared. But I didn't back down. Not anymore. That night, I packed a go bag and hid it in the trunk of my car. I backed up every file, every email, every voicemail onto a hard drive and gave it to Linda for safekeeping. And I wrote a letter. Not for Jacob, but for myself. It said, "You are not crazy. You are not dramatic. You are surviving a slow, invisible war. And you are almost free." But I wasn't free yet. Because 3 nights later, I heard something I'll never forget. Through the thin walls of our bedroom, I heard Jacob whisper into his phone. "I can get more. She doesn't know how much is really left. I can make it look like an accident." I stopped breathing. He wasn't just lying. He was planning something. There are moments in life when everything shifts. The axis of your reality tilts, and suddenly, nothing feels solid anymore. Your name, your memories, even your own heartbeat begins to feel like it belongs to someone else. That was me, standing in my own kitchen, frozen, after hearing the man I married whisper into the dark about making something look like an accident.
He was talking about me.
I didn't sleep that night. I didn't blink. I lay there beside him, listening to every breath, wondering if it would be the last night I'd ever open my eyes. By morning, I had made a decision. I was done watching from the sidelines. It was time to act. First, I called Linda and told her everything. Every single word I'd overheard. She didn't flinch. "You're not crazy."
"I've seen this before," she said.
"We'll handle it. But you need to follow every step I give you exactly." We set up a safe house, a friend of hers who used to work in law enforcement. I couldn't tell anyone, not even my sister. The fewer people who knew, the better. That night, I staged a breakdown. Cried in front of Jacob. Told him I couldn't take the stress anymore. That I needed a few days at my sister's to clear my head. He looked almost relieved. "Yeah, that's probably for the best," he muttered. He didn't hug me. He didn't say, "I love you." He just went back to watching a poker tournament on TV. I left at dawn. And I didn't go to my sister's. I went off the grid. For 48 hours, I didn't call him, didn't text. I watched him through surveillance Linda had arranged. We had access to his emails, GPS, and phone activity.
What we found chilled me.
He hadn't called to check on me. Not once. But he had contacted Viper 6 times. Each message was more frantic than the last. She's gone. I think she knows. What do I do now? But it was the last one that made my blood run cold. She's the only thing left. If I lose her, I lose everything. That confirmed it. Jacob's plan wasn't just betrayal. It was destruction. But what shocked me the most wasn't his messages. It was who Viper really was. We traced the burner phone number back through a proxy chain, VPNs, and decoy names. But Linda had contacts who were very, very good at what they did. And what they found made me physically sick. Viper was my father-in-law, Jacob's own father. A man I had only met twice, once at our wedding, once at a dinner 3 years ago. Cold, calculating, and distant. A retired corporate financier with a criminal record sealed behind expensive lawyers and offshore accounts. Apparently, Jacob had inherited more than just a love for gambling. He'd inherited a taste for manipulation. It all came rushing back like poison lightning. The strange phone calls Jacob would take in the garage. The way he'd insist on keeping my name on shared investments. The time his father sent him that envelope and Jacob threw it in the fire. They were never just random acts of emotion. They were instructions. He was using me to cover debts, to launder money,
to stay out of prison.
My signature, my identity, my accounts were all being used like pawns in a game I never agreed to play. I wasn't his wife. I was his insurance policy. I went numb for a full day. The realization pulled something out of me I didn't know existed. Rage deeper than the ocean. But even deeper than that was a new force.
Clarity.
I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't doubting myself anymore. Jacob had chosen this. And now I was going to make sure he lost everything. We coordinated with Detective Liddell. He gathered enough evidence from our files, the burner phone, and financial traces to open an official case of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. But we needed one last thing. A confession. Or, at least, something damning caught on record. So I made the call. I told Jacob I wanted to come back. He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I miss you." The lie sounded like broken glass in my ear. I told him I'd be home that Friday night. I didn't go alone. Linda parked in a car down the street, listening through the wire hidden in my necklace. Detective Liddell waited in the surveillance van. I entered our house like a ghost. Jacob looked thinner, more frantic. But when he saw me, he forced a smile. "Baby," he said. "You came back." I walked to him, touched his face, and whispered, "Did you mean it?" He blinked. "Mean what?" "When you said you'd make it look like an accident." His whole body froze. And then he laughed. "You're overthinking things again, Elena." I smiled sadly.
"No.
I'm finally thinking clearly." We danced around the truth for an hour. I played the part of the hurt, desperate wife. He played the repentant husband. Until he slipped. "They'll never trace it back to you," he said, pacing. "I set it up, so it looks like I did it all. If anything ever happens, if I disappear, it's all on me. You're clean. They can't touch you."
He thought he was protecting me.
What he didn't realize was, he'd just admitted to everything. 2 hours later, they arrested him.
Fraud.
Identity theft. Conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. A secret life of debt and deceit unraveling like a noose. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty. Because the man I had loved, really deeply loved, had been hollow the whole time. He never gambled because he believed in luck. He gambled because he didn't believe in us. And the worst part? He didn't even look surprised when they took him away. He just looked tired. Like he'd been waiting for it all along.
You'd think the arrest would be the end.
The satisfying gavel slam moment when the villain is carted off, justice is served, and life begins anew. But real life doesn't work like that. In real life, the villain doesn't disappear, they linger. They echo. They infect everything they touched, long after they're gone. The media got wind of Jacob's arrest within 24 hours. Wife helps take down husband in multi-million-dollar fraud ring. It went viral faster than I could prepare for. My face was on every outlet. Every news channel had some twisted version of our story. Some made me a hero. Some made me a fool. But no one knew what it actually cost me to get there. Jacob's trial date was set. And in the days leading up to it, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the locks 3 times a night. Kept waking up thinking I heard him breathing behind me. Kept seeing Viper's name flash across burner phones in my nightmares. Linda came over often, brought food, made sure I ate, reminded me that I was safe now. But there was a look in her eyes she didn't hide anymore. She was worried, and for good reason, because someone had started following me. It began subtly. A black car parked outside my house for hours, engine running. The same man with mirrored sunglasses showing up at the grocery store. Then again outside the courthouse. Then again when I went to my attorney's office. I told Detective Liddell. He ran plates. Unregistered. Likely rented under a fake ID. We couldn't prove anything. But I knew. Jacob didn't act alone. One evening, I came home and found a note taped to my bathroom mirror. No signature. Just 3 chilling words. You weren't innocent. My heart nearly stopped. I ran to check every door, every window. Nothing broken. No signs of forced entry. But that note, it had been placed intentionally. Liddell installed cameras. Linda increased security. But paranoia doesn't care about evidence. It eats you from the inside, turning logic into whispers and safety into traps. And I was back where I started. Afraid. Watching my own reflection as if it might betray me. The confrontation came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days before the trial. I was coming home from the grocery store, bags in hand. Rain pouring so hard it blurred the world outside. When I unlocked the front door, I felt it, like static on my skin. The moment I stepped inside, the air shifted. Too quiet. Too still. I dropped the bags and turned slowly. Jacob was sitting at my dining table, soaking wet.
Calm.
Smiling. Hey, baby, he said softly. Miss me? My mouth went dry. I couldn't scream. Couldn't move. I know, he said, raising his hands. This looks bad. But I had to talk to you. Really talk. How did you get out? I finally choked. He shrugged.
Bail.
Daddy pulled a few strings. My stomach twisted. Of course, Viper wasn't going to let him rot quietly. Jacob looked at me with the same eyes I used to fall asleep beside. Only now they were vacant, like glass marbles with nothing behind them. You were never supposed to be involved in any of this, he said. It got out of hand. Out of hand. I snapped. You stole my identity.
You used me.
I loved you, he insisted. I still do. But love's not always clean. Sometimes it's survival. He stood slowly, took a step forward. I came here because I need your help. The room tilted. I'm not helping you, I whispered. He paused, tilted his head. Think about it. You flip on me in court and they'll ask questions. About what you knew, when you knew it, and how much of the money was actually in your name. He smiled darkly. You go down with me. That was his final move. His endgame. If he couldn't use me quietly, he'd use me publicly, as leverage, as a shield. But he forgot one thing. I wasn't scared anymore. I had lost everything already, my money, my safety, my trust in the man I married. There was nothing left for him to take. So, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I reached into the side drawer by the hallway, pulled out the small pistol Linda had taught me how to load, and aimed it at Jacob. He froze.
Get out.
Elena, don't. I said get out. He backed away slowly. But even then, he smirked. You won't shoot me. You still love me. My finger twitched on the trigger. I loved who you pretended to be, not who you are. He left, got into that black car, vanished into the storm. But this time, I called Liddell immediately. They tracked the car's GPS, alerted nearby units. Jacob was rearrested within the hour. This time, without bail. At the arraignment, I was called to testify. The courtroom felt like a theater of ghosts. I stood, trembling slightly, and told my truth. Start to finish. No tears. No breaks. Just clarity. Jacob didn't look at me once. I walked out into the blinding sunlight, chest tight but shoulders high. I had done it. Faced the monster. Survived the fire. But I knew this wasn't the end. There was still one last truth to uncover, something I could feel deep in my bones. Because Jacob hadn't acted alone. And someone somewhere was still watching. You think when the monster's caged, the nightmare ends. You want to believe that once the evil is exposed, your life goes back to how it was. But I learned something else entirely. When the storm clears, you don't go back to who you were. You become someone new, someone forged in lightning and fear. In the days after Jacob's conviction, I moved out of the house. I sold every piece of furniture he had touched, burned every letter he had ever written. But memories don't fit into boxes or burn in fire. They live in the spaces between. In the silence of empty rooms. In the hesitation when someone new touches your hand and your brain flashes red, screaming danger even when none exists. People called me brave. They said I was strong. Survivor. Hero. But I didn't feel like any of those things. I felt hollow. Like I'd won a war by becoming someone else entirely. Linda stayed close. She brought tea, sat with me for hours without speaking, sometimes just watching old movies in silence. One night, she handed me a folder. "What's this?" I asked. Her eyes were dark. Serious. "Something you need to see." Inside were documents. Phone records. Wire transfers. Property deeds. All leading back to a trust fund. Not Jacob's.
Mine.
A fund set up in my name 10 years ago, with massive deposits from unknown sources. I frowned. "What is this?" Linda's voice was almost a whisper. "It's a fallback account. One Jacob didn't touch." "But I never set this up." "You didn't," she said. I looked at her. Confused. Angry. She leaned in. "Your mother did." I laughed. "Linda, my mom died when I was 15. She didn't blink. She disappeared. That's what they told you." The air left my lungs. "I don't understand." Linda opened another file. Photos. Surveillance images. Letters written in looping cursive. And one, sealed in an envelope, with my name on it. I stared at the return address. Wyoming. A town I'd never heard of. The letter was dated 2 weeks ago. "Elena, if you're reading this, it means you've survived something I feared would come for you. I wish I had told you sooner. But I had to disappear to protect you. Jacob was never random. His family targeted ours a long time ago. Your father was involved in something that got him killed. I ran to protect you. Gave you to your aunt. Watched from a distance. Kept the money hidden in your name. He found you anyway. I am so sorry. But you're stronger than I ever was. And you've already done what I never could. You stood up to them. You stopped the cycle. I love you. I always have."
Mom.
My world tilted again. All those years of thinking I was alone. That my mother had died in a car crash. That I was the only survivor. All of it, lies designed to protect me. And yet here I was. Not broken. Still standing. I went to Wyoming a week later. Found a small cabin by a lake. The woman who opened the door had my eyes. She didn't cry. She just reached out and touched my face like she couldn't believe I was real. "Hi, Mom," I whispered. And we stood there for a long time, holding each other as the years dissolved between us. Back home, Jacob's sentence was handed down. 25 years. No parole. The courtroom was silent. He didn't look at me when I walked past. But I paused at the door. Just for a moment. Not to gloat. Not to hate. But to end it. "You lost more than money," I said softly. "You lost me." He didn't reply. Didn't blink. But a tear slid down his cheek. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't justice. But it was enough. I built a new life.
Quiet.
Simple. A small place by the water where I write, plant flowers, and laugh again. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and don't recognize the woman staring back. But I like her. She's sharp, wiser, a little dangerous, maybe, but free. And just when I thought it was truly over,
A small package arrived.
no return address. Just a note tucked inside. Some debts never die. Stay ready. Inside was a single poker chip.
Red.
Unmarked. The same kind Jacob always kept in his pocket for luck. Was it from him? From Viper? Or someone else in the shadows of this tangled web? I didn't know, but I put it in a drawer beside my bed. Not because I was afraid, but because I was prepared. Because when you face the worst, you don't fear what's next. You meet it with eyes wide open, and a mind that remembers everything.